So we're going to talk about NFTs again, non-fungible tokens, a really exciting space. And today we're going to bring on the CEO of Crypto Chicks NFT. We got a real exciting show ahead of us, and we're going to learn more about NFTs. I'm Andy Gersher, and this is Gains. So we're going to bring on Alyssa Merklein, CEO of Crypto Chicks NFT out of San Francisco. Hey, Alyssa, real quick, what's the website to get the best info on all of this?
The best info for Crypto Chicks is pretty easy. It's just cryptochicks.app.
And so glad to have you on the Gains podcast. Thanks for joining us today, Alyssa.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan. I spoke last week live on the radio, and I didn't get a chance to share this, but as you are in Chicago, I can't let this entire conversation go by without sharing that I grew up in Wisconsin, and I am right just a hop and a skip away is where I had my childhood from.
Okay,
from
well, you know, since it's a podcast and we can kind of delve into it, Wisconsin, Kenosha, Madison, what are we talking?
A suburb of Milwaukee. I'm shocked that you're so familiar with different locales within Wisconsin, but I love that.
Yeah, well, you know, I actually lived in Mount Horeb, which is in the Madison area, and just being from Chicago, spend a lot of time in Wisconsin. So now you're in the San Francisco area, the Bay Area, and before we, delve into the details here, I know a lot of the Gains audience is probably pretty familiar with NFTs. We've talked about it before on the podcast, but for those newbies that aren't familiar with NFTs, non-fungible tokens, let's just start right there. What is an NFT? And then, Alyssa, explain why an NFT is different than crypto.
Yes. NFT, non-fungible token, as you said, is basically an immutable proof within the blockchain that you own a specific asset. So, for example, I might own an image of an ape, and my image is completely unique, 100% different from the ape that you own. And if in this ideal world where we're both owning these $300,000 apes, if someone goes to take a screenshot or they just download the image of it, they own the picture, but they don't own the NFT. And so all of the benefits and the utility and the access to the community that comes with the actual NFT is stored on the blockchain as your proof of ownership. And so it eliminates a lot of these problems that have arisen in the art world, but even further than that, right? So NFTs aren't exclusive just to artwork and images. There's all sorts of other NFTs that might be music, for example. Many of us remember early 2000s services like LimeWire. It was really easy for anyone to download a pirated copy of a track of music. And with NFTs, everything is stored in the blockchain. And so it's very easy to have really clear, tangible, or non-fungible proof of the fact that you own that specific asset. The reason it's different from crypto is because each individual asset that a person owns is unique. And so the asset that I own, the image or theoretically a song that I may own or a poem or a piece of photography is unique. And it's different based on the token ID within the blockchain from the image or the song or the piece of photography that you may own. Whereas if I own a Dogecoin or if I own a Bitcoin, it's no different from the Dogecoin or the Bitcoin that you own. And the other thing I think that's a little bit different from crypto NFTs is all of this utility that's built in beyond just the actual a token ID that you own. So a lot of communities are using these tokens as membership passes to be able to partake in the vision that they're building.
Well, you mentioned communities are a really big part of that as well. I mean, yeah, a sheep is a sheep, like a doge is a doge is a doge, but your NFT for your specific image or rights to whatever that is exclusive and single. So to start, let's use the Mona Lisa as an example. Oh, well, just because I don't own the Mona Lisa, I can take a picture of it, and isn't that just as good Well, not really. And Alyssa, I think, explain.
Yeah. So Mona Lisa, we know there's one and only. There's an official one. It's hanging in the museum. There's thousands upon thousands of people that go to look at that specific one every day. If you go to the museum, you're on your way out, you go to the gift shop, you can probably pick one up for like $20 or something along those lines.
Right, just a poster or picture in the gift shop, right?
Right, exactly. So a representation of it, but not the original creation. And as you're buying that, maybe checking out with your credit card or something, you have no expectation that when you buy this for $20 today, this print or this poster, maybe it's on a phone case or something along those lines, you don't have any realistic expectation that you're going to be able to sell that for hundreds of millions of dollars, because there's no proof of, and it's obvious that it's not the real original creation. And so that's just on the basis of proof of ownership as a whole. However, for example, if there was this exclusive community for people that own original artwork of the most expensive pieces of artwork in the world, you would also not have the expectation with this $20 poster that you have purchased that you would be able to attend those events, to be able to network with the other owners of the other representations of this artwork. And so there's a difference there in type of membership access that you are getting as a part of owning the original asset through proof on the blockchain that it's a non-fungible token. So in this example, it's very clear, and this is obviously a dramatic example because when we're looking at images online, it's not quite as clear cut. And that's where smart contracts come into play. So if you see two images online, they visually look very similar. And it's not an oil painting compared to a digital print on a poster. And so for some people, right, there is a lot of speculation about what is the value here, what's the difference between these two assets. One was saved from a website versus one is actually a token living in the blockchain. And that's where a lot of communities are developing around how can we use these tokens as membership to build communities of like-minded people that have similarities in how they want to have impact in the world or how they want to see utility from a collection. So there are NFTs that are getting into the world of gaming. There are NFTs that are very exclusive communities holding very high-profile events at major tech conferences and things like that. And then there are communities that are specifically like Crypto Chicks that are focused on how can we create an inclusive space to help introduce more people into an industry that has historically sort of been a little bit exclusive for people like women. And so using that proof of originality as a way to have a membership path into a community to then meet people and participate in an ecosystem that is aligned with you as an individual is really how I differentiate between what would be the original creation living on the blockchain or hanging in a museum in the Mona Lisa example compared to the print that you're going to walk out of the museum with.
I think the community aspect of that is something that a lot of people who are new to this aren't familiar with. And again, it's more than just a picture. We've seen a lot of us who are familiar with some of the popular NFTs over the past couple of years. I mean, you got the Bored Apes and the Crypto Punks and Cool Cats. And in fact, I just recently saw a tweet that said, I can't believe I just bought an NFT of a pile of dirt. But so anyway, we've seen a lot of these examples out there. Let's specifically talk Crypto Chicks. It's a collection of NFTs. How many? Explain all of that.
Yeah. So Crypto Chicks is a collection of 10,000 NFTs, and it's comprised of hundreds of different traits that are programmatically overlaid to create the final NFT. And what I love most about Crypto Chicks is the type of representation within those different traits. And so the collection is images of women, but with the combination of all of these traits, there's women of all sorts of different hair colors, hairstyles, different types of clothing that they wear, different skin colors, different eye colors, different types of makeup, different personalities depending on what facial expression they have. And so in an industry that has been historically very predominantly male, and that means both representation within the artwork, but also the people that are operating within the industry, it's one of the things that we find resonates the most with people as they're looking at different NFTs, looking at different collections, as this is what would be the digital representation of your identity in the metaverse, but also on social media. And so for women, allowing women to find this space where they can find an NFT or a digital representation of themselves is super meaningful. It's one of the things that we hear the most from folks, that they love that they've been able to find a profile picture or this NFT that actually looks like them. So one of the things we've found the most exciting, we have a whole bunch of women that are posting their real life image that they call the Web 2 version versus the Web 3 version, which is their Crypto Chick, and how it looks very similar. And so that level of representation within the artwork is something that I think is very unique to Crypto Chicks.
You mentioned there's 10,000 NFTs in the collection, so each one is a different image, Crypto Chick image. Have they all been minted? Are some more rare than others? Explain that.
Yes. So the way that they have all been minted, first of all.
And real quick, Alyssa, explain that too, because I just for people who don't understand that, and we can move on to the other stuff. When you create a collection, how does that actually work? You have the initial people who then go in and mint these, and then now all of these are available on the secondary market, like OpenSea, Robinhood. Some of these other platforms are going to be adding NFT markets too. Very exciting, by the way. But explain minting and how that all works. And you mentioned all 10,000 of the NFTs in this Crypto Chicks collection have been minted. Explain that real quick, and then we can talk about the other aspects of it.
Yeah, so the way that minting works, we think about minting as sort of primary sales. So that's when an individual or people that want to join the community are buying the NFT directly from the founders on their own website. It's kind of like if we think back to 2017, the ICO days, or 2016, 2017. So it's when you're buying it for the first time, you are interacting with the smart contract directly in order to purchase an NFT and get this token back for the first time. And as soon as that happens, there's a limited number. So in our case, there's 10,000. As soon as there are 10,000 of those purchased, there are no more to be purchased for the first time. And the only way that people can get them is buying them on the secondary market, such as OpenSea. So it's kind of like if we think about, let's use designer bags for an example. You can buy a bag from Chanel and you buy it in the 1990s. It's a vintage bag. You carry that around for a really long time. You love it, but you want to get something new, but you want to sell that. You would go on a platform like eBay and sell it to someone else. It's a peer-to-peer trade, and it's facilitated by a marketplace like eBay. So in this other instance that we're talking about with NFTs, it's a peer-to-peer transaction where I'm an individual selling it to another individual, and OpenSea is the marketplace that facilitates that transaction. But the interesting thing is that it also facilitates a percentage of the transaction of all of these secondary sales to go back to the original founders. So if we think about it from the perspective of this designer bag, for example, if I'm selling this bag on eBay, a 2% of that transaction might go back to Chanel or whatever this brand is that we're using. And so that creates a really long-term revenue tail for artists and creators that historically they get maybe a small amount up front, but then as their art gains more notoriety or popularity, the price goes up. But it goes up in the secondary market where they are not necessarily attributed any of that revenue.
But so because it's on the blockchain, there's a percentage that's built in, and they get a cut of every transaction going forward, correct?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
One thing real quick, I find that very interesting, and that can show how these things can be super valuable in the future, especially if you're part of a revenue sharing aspect of it. Is that built in the contract? How do you know how that, if that exists? I'm just curious. I mean, I've heard there's a cut in, but is there some kind of contract? How do you know that's there?
Yeah, so it's actually done right now on the platform level. So if you are the owner of the smart contract, you log into these platforms and there's an admin panel there where you set a specific percentage. So it's not something yet that's actually written directly into the smart contracts, but in the future, maybe that's another way to make it a little bit more transparent with the rest of the market, how these things are working.
That information is available in the smart contract. You could find that if you bought one of these, correct?
You can find it on the different platforms. So if you're buying something on OpenSea, you would be able to see it on OpenSea directly, what percentage is going in terms of an OpenSea platform fee, which is also included, versus what percentage is going to the founders. A
lot of people also ask me, you mentioned that, all 10,000 in your collection have already been minted. How do individuals get access to these early collections, or to a collection when it's early on? How does that work?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question because right now it can be really competitive. So there's a lot of people in the NFT market. There's different cohorts of people. Let's say that there's one cohort that is really heavily interested in buying at the minting phase very early on and then selling it pretty quickly thereafter for a profit. And so it's a really quick margin that they're after, and people can be incredibly successful in that. But with that
Butters comes to mind. Butters comes to mind from South Park. Have you seen that episode?
Yep.
I had to throw that in there. That is just beautiful. All right, sorry to interrupt you, but I knew you'd get a chuckle out of there. And anybody in the Gaines Nation who has seen that South Park episode with Butters and NFTs will get a chuckle out of that as well. Continue. I'm sorry.
So funny. So that is where we see a lot of competition in the market. For very high-profile projects that are launching, there is a lot of competition to get access to what people are now calling an allow list, which is basically wallets that are submitted to the team in advance of this minting process starting, and those people get preferential access to buy the NFT from the collection. And there's a lot of different ways that collections are granting access to that allow list, but a lot of them are very time intensive. They might require you being a member of a different NFT collection who has put together a collaboration. It can be very hard for the high profile projects that are launching to actually get access to that. And then when it opens up into a public sale, which is when anyone can mint from it, there's an incredible number of bots that people have set up that will programmatically write to the smart contract in order to buy NFTs in a way that's much faster than a human can click a button, for example, to actually purchase it manually. And so you find that the prices and transaction fees for some of these public sales far exceed the cost of the NFT itself, simply because there's so much demand hitting the Ethereum network at the same time as everyone's trying to buy a specific collection within one instant or under 1 minute, for example. So it's pretty challenging, and it requires a lot of time investment. I'll be candid. A lot of time spent on Twitter, a lot of time spent in various different project Discords. And I've found that usually there are communities that have similar ethos or a similar mission, and they will set up partnerships or collaborations. And that's usually the best bet to get into any of these really high-profile events that are upcoming.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to delve into Crypto Chicks NFTs, and we're going to talk about utility, access, all of that with Alyssa here. But hey, real quick, be sure to subscribe, follow, and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if that's an option for you. I've been told that's podcast gold. And then as always, subscribe and turn on those notifications so you know when a new episode drops. And we will be right back.
If you enjoy learning about communities, culture, and history, then Shades of the City podcast is for you. We will bring you stories like the legacy of Johnson Publishing Company, most notably known for Jet and Ebony magazines.
Basically, what the world said African American people could not do, these magazines proved otherwise.
Subscribe now to Shades of the City on the Odyssey app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, we're back with Alyssa Merklein, CEO of Crypto Chicks NFT out of San Francisco. Any other plugs you want to give us, Alyssa?
Yes, our website is pretty simple. It's cryptochicks.app. Our Twitter is where a lot more of the fun happens. It's also pretty easy to remember. It's just NFT Crypto Chicks, all one word, no lower cases or no underscores or anything like that. But for people that are new to the NFT world, I really recommend Twitter as a great resource to find thought leaders, to find collections and projects that you're really excited about the community. The vast majority of activity and learnings to be had are happening in the Twitter world. So that's a really good place to get started.
All right, outstanding. Now, if I'm not mistaken, were you a collegiate athlete, maybe a swimmer or something like that?
I was, as a matter of fact.
All right, very cool. Where did you go to school? You were a swimmer, and let's just take off from, like, how did a collegiate swimmer end up being the CEO of Crypto Chicks NFT?
Yeah, good question. So I swam competitively my whole life. I started when I was 5 years old, and when I went to college, I went to Carnegie Mellon for my undergraduate degree, and I decided to continue swimming during my time there. I was also a double major in business and statistics, and so through my degree in statistics, I've always been incredibly fascinated by financial markets, by probability, and understanding all of these market dynamics at play. After I graduated from my undergraduate degree, I moved out to San Francisco and started my career working for Visa, a big tech company, obviously very heavily involved in payments, which is an industry that, in my opinion, is going to be heavily disrupted by blockchain. And through my time working there, that's how I really got involved in investing in altcoins, investing in different types of cryptocurrency, because as you learn more and more about how the payments world works, you learn more and more about the inefficiencies and the number of middlemen or middle persons that interact with any online transaction or peer-to-peer payment or basically any transfer of money from point A to point B. And so the level of inefficiency, but also the amount of people that are taking little tiny cuts throughout each of those is fascinating, but also a really strong case for what blockchain will do from an overall global equity and financial inclusion perspective. So I started investing in a bunch of different crypto altcoins.
That was your entry? That was your entry into this, right? Crypto. It all starts with crypto, right?
It does.
It does.
I was actually in the Bitcoin club also in my university, but that was way back in like 2012. So I wasn't heavily investing at that time. I should have, though.
Don't you wish you were?
I have a lot of regrets.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. Did you get in on the Doge thing last year? Did you get in on SHIB this past fall? I'm just curious.
I got in on Doge. I didn't get in SHIB. I got a little bit burned on Doge, I'll admit. I bought some early. I didn't buy enough. And then when word came out that Elon was going on SNL and there was a lot of speculation about what he was going to say on SNL, I thought, I'm going to go not all in, but I'm going to put in a bit.
You thought it was going to go to $1 during SNL, didn't you?
Exactly. And I think I bought it at like 50 cents or something, thinking it was going to go up to $1. And I didn't put in enough to get seriously burned,
right,
but enough to remember and realize that some of the meme coins can go in ways that you don't expect.
Yeah, it's funny. I know a lot of people who got in at a nickel, as did I. Got in at a nickel and rode that up, but didn't get out nearly as soon as I should have. It's not a bad investment, but yeah, and these things are volatile, but everybody I've talked to who's been in this space, it's always, you started getting a little in with Bitcoin and Ethereum. Next thing you know, you're doing a degenerate trade like Doge, and then before you know it, you're on Uniswap's getting sheep or some other real far altcoin. So then you kind of dabbled in the crypto, and not surprised. I was in foreign exchange a million years ago. Not surprised you were in payments and familiar with if you're familiar with international transactions, you see the value in crypto right away. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that your taste of all of this is crypto. Then how did you then get to the NFT aspect of it and decide to then put together this collection?
Yeah, so then after working at Visa, I realized I don't love big companies. I think Visa is a really exciting company in terms of market dominance and their stature within the world, but I really like building things and being a part of creating something and having a lot of impact. And so I left my role at Visa and joined a very early stage startup that was pre-revenue before they raised their seed round of funding, and was one of the very, very early employees. And I led business operations there, reporting to the CEO for just about 4 years. And with that, I was a part of growing the company to roughly like 130 employees across 10 different countries. And that was my first flavor of building something, really feeling like, okay, you start with nothing and then you do a lot of pivots and figure out what does the market want and how can we as a company solve that problem in a way that creates and captures value. And so I, after being there for 4 years, felt like the company was at a point where it was more optimization as opposed to building something new. And so I left to go start something on my own. And right around that time, I started investing in the NFT space from purely a collector standpoint. And I had some ETH that I had made quite a few gains on since investing when it was around like $75 or so. And at that time, ETH was around like 4,000, 4,500. And so I thought, hey, you know what? Why not buy some nice images with this? And I had some friends talking about NFTs, and I thought this might be interesting. It seems like it's gaining a lot of momentum and traction within more of the popular media. And so I started investing in the sort of gender ambiguous profile pictures of animals. And I found, at least my personal experience, was that if you don't have a profile picture that signals to people what your gender is, everyone assumes that you are a man. So I am a chatty person. So I'm sitting there talking to people on Discord half of the day, and at least 10 times a day, people were saying, my dude, my guy, hey, man. And so I'd have to constantly be correcting people. And I then learned about Cryptochicks. So I actually am not the founder of Cryptochicks. I joined first as a community member, and I invested in the collection because I thought, hey, this is the first chance I've seen for me to buy an NFT that actually looks like me. I'm sick of people calling me a dude, and here is a chance for me to have a woman with a similar skin tone to me. She has blonde hair that's the same hair color as me, wears similar clothing, and then as I go and interact with people online, they get a sense for what my real life identity is. And so I joined first as a community member, and I really felt like Cryptochicks was in a super unique position where they had launched. There was a lot of momentum about the artwork, but not a lot of clear understanding yet of how to build and scale this into a business. And since that's where I have a pretty good amount of professional expertise, I thought this is my chance to get involved in a way that's very closely aligned with what I'm personally very passionate about, and help them to steer Cryptochicks in a way that's building it more like a business and a company as opposed to a passion project. And so I got involved first leading communications, and then I joined as a chief marketing officer. And then very recently with the founding team stepping aside, I actually, with another member, purchased the collection and became the CEO.
Oh, very interesting.
It's been quite a ride.
Who was the original artist? I'm just curious.
The founding team is brother and sister who are out of Russia. They're very, very young and really just passionate about the space, and they launched the initial collection, like 10 months ago, and they thought to themselves, hey, there's not a lot of representation in this industry for women, and we want to make a statement on that. And so they created a first initial collection that was 200 pieces, and then later they launched this 10K generative collection. And so they, with that, they were super passionate about the art, blockchain technology, but weren't so passionate about the how do we build this into a business and the day-to-day operational complexities.
I completely understand that. Yeah, you can completely understand. Just because you invent something, you're a great artist, doesn't mean that you can monetize it, turn it into a successful business. You had became part of the community. Seems like you have a bit of passion for this. This is where you took over.
Yep, yeah, exactly.
So now let's talk about utility and access. Real quick, the initial 200 Crypto Chicks, that first edition, do they exist? Are they on the open market? I'm just curious, what happens to those? Are they part of the 10,000 collection? Are they separate? Are they worth more?
Yes, they do exist. They are separate. It's 200 pieces. They're also only available on the secondary markets right now on OpenSea, and they are more expensive because there's only 200 of them. So they are in the magnitude of 7 Ethereum right now, which is roughly around $21,000 for an entry point. So scarcity is a big thing in the world of NFTs, and when there's far less of something, that supply and demand, that drives the price up.
All right, now let's talk about utility and access, and I think that's something that's a little different. So we know that in a lot of cases when we talk NFTs, it's a particular image, but there's this whole community behind it, and sometimes ownership of that NFT gives you access to maybe that community's party or something else. So I think this is the most interesting thing. A lot of people who just scratch the surface on NFTs, they see, you have rights and ownership of a particular image, and that image that you might use in the metaverse. But there's so much more to this community and utility and access. And I think that's the most important part that a lot of people aren't familiar with if they're new to this. Explain, Alyssa.
Yeah, so one of the big things about NFTs as a whole is communities, and people who haven't really dipped their toe yet into the space don't quite have exposure to that level of community from what I've seen. And so people that do enter the market, they're kind of blown away, right? If you buy a Crypto Chick NFT and you change your profile picture on Twitter, you're going to get flooded with people that are following you. They're liking your posts. They're commenting, saying, welcome to the community.
So you're saying, like, if you bought a Crypto Chick and then you put that image on your Twitter account and said, hey, I just bought a Crypto Chick NFT in OpenSea, here it is, people in the community are going to get excited about that.
Exactly. And that's, I think, that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. That's what you see from a public-facing perspective about community, but it also goes a lot deeper. So the Crypto Chicks, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is having a really inclusive, but also a really active community. We know that women as a whole are a little bit more risk-averse with investments, and they like to be more mission-oriented or have some sort of social impact with the way that they're investing. And we know on a whole, right, that my favorite study to quote from Gemini says 26% of the traders on their platform in crypto, they've also surveyed a bunch of people, and they know that 53% of people out there that are quote-unquote crypto curious are women, which means there are a lot of women that want to enter this space, but that are not yet in this space, but are curious about doing so. And communities is one of the things that really drives this adoption, because people feel like, okay, here's a safe space where I can ask a bunch of questions about security, about how not to get scammed, about what are other things that people are interested in, and really building these interpersonal connections in a way that hasn't quite been facilitated yet to date. So we've found that community and access to, as you said, events that are both in real life, but also virtual events. So having events in metaverse where people from all around the world can start to meet each other and build connections with people from all sorts of different cultures and backgrounds and different professions and domains of expertise. And that's something that for women who care a little more about the mission impact of their investments, or what are they getting beyond just the financial returns, that starts to be incredibly interesting as an entry point into a market that is otherwise traditionally kind of portrayed in social media as scary or incredibly volatile and risky. And as we start creating more of this understanding within the market that there are collections that are doing a lot of social good, but also creating very strong networks and communities that translate into physical or in real life benefits through events, through professional connections, that starts to get a little bit more interesting for people.
I mean, there's so many collections, wolves, apes, crypto chicks, the whole 9 yards. What's your advice for somebody who's new to the space? How to sort through this? How do you pick which one you want to get into? There's a ton out there, and I see, even in something I watch in Twitter, and that's you had mentioned Twitter's a great place to follow a lot of this. It certainly is. And I'm constantly seeing new collections put together, but it just seems very difficult on, what collection should I choose? How does that all work?
Yeah, so I recommend to people to get a Twitter, get a Discord account, and spend like 2 weeks just trying to figure out who are the people that you want to follow, who can you learn a lot from in a way that doesn't seem incredibly promotional or aligned with one particular project, and try to learn as much as you can before actually spending any money. And the reason I say this is because from my own personal experience, my first time I got on Twitter, I started reading about NFTs. Someone was talking about this new collection that had just launched. It was going to be the next Bored Ape Yacht Club, and it was going to be huge. And I thought to myself, well, of course, why would I not want to buy that? And so I did without doing much research. And then now I have a very cute image of a raccoon sitting in my profile that is worth approximately $0. And so there's a lot of information flowing on the social media platforms. And it's really important to find people who are true thought leaders that will give you good advice and learnings within the market without getting caught up in all of these other market principles like FOMO that are so strong. So that's one of my big recommendations. The other thing is that I really recommend people find a project and a vision and a team that they're really excited about building for the next few years. So there's usually when a project launches, or when they're planning to launch, they have a website. On that website, they should have pretty clear information about this is the team, this is their professional background before what they're doing now, and then this is the roadmap of all of the milestones and deliverables that they are promising to do once they take in all of these funds. And I really recommend that people have a deep think about, is this team qualified to be doing the things that they say that they're going to be doing in this roadmap? And is it a team that you really see doing this for a long term, like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and beyond that? Or is this something that it feels like they're really looking to make a quick buck here and then move on to the next thing? Just because, unfortunately, there is a good amount of that in the market. But if you start to take a closer look, you can kind of see which ones that are versus which ones are people that are reputable people that have their LinkedIn linked. They have a really clear bio of this is who I am, so I'm not going anywhere, for example.
There are some that are just in it for the money, the quick turnaround. We were talking about Butters earlier. But then there's community. And, let's talk about Crypto Chicks. Talk about that community. Talk about the long-term vision. You're not going to be around for a year or two. It's going to be a lot longer. It sounds like you really want to build something here. Explain that. Yeah,
so we want to be the brand that is the central nexus for all things related to empowering women within Web3. So there's a bunch of different roles that women and underrepresented groups can have in the Web3 industry in various different formats. You can be engineers, you can be artists, but you can also be fashion designers, you can be project founders, you can be investors. And so we are creating all of these various initiatives that will help to empower and enable women in all of these different spheres to be a part of the building of Web3. And with that, each of the holders of the Cryptochicks NFT gets exclusive access to the various different initiatives that we'll be creating. So, for example, there's a lot of combination right now between what does real world fashion look like with what we inevitably know is coming in the future, which is the metaverse, and how can we translate this concept of buying clothing or buying digital assets with each other. So, for example, one of the projects that we'll be launching is empowerment of emerging fashion designers or jewelry designers that sell physical goods and tying that physical good with the wearable version of it. So when an individual buys say, for example, a necklace, they will also, in addition to having that necklace shipped to their home, they'll get a metaverse wearable version of that, where if they're going to events, if they're going to like a networking seminar or a party, they would be able to wear those assets in the metaverse just as they would in real life. So, I mean, that's just one example, but we're really looking for creative ways that we can empower women. And our community is also passionate about this mission. And I'm really proud to say that Crypto Chicks is not a community that's just for women. We have roughly 50% men within our community. And so we wholeheartedly understand that the vast majority of the crypto and Web3 space is people who identify as men, and having those men that are passionate about creating space to uplift and empower women within the space is really important to us. And so just to get it out there that there's a lot of misconception that a project that's focused on empowering women might be exclusive to just only women, but we have tons of men within our community, and they're some of our most passionate and engaged community members. So I think that's important to call out when we talk about community, that it really is something that's inclusive to everyone who's excited about this mission of empowering women within the Web3 space.
You know, I'm curious, what's your favorite apparel brand? What do you like?
I like a lot of labels. I like everything ranging from very high end. I would say Prada is like my dream bag company.
Nice,
but then
nice.
I'm also a big fan of some of the newer startups that are coming out that are sustainable sourcing, or they're doing no labels branding of luxury goods. There's a new company called Italic that does that. Everlane is another company that does a lot of transparency on the supply chain and the sourcing of the materials that they use. And so they do a cost plus model where it's very clear transparency into the purchasing price of each of the materials that go into their goods. So lots of different companies out there that I'm passionate about, but the high-end luxury one would be Prada if I have to pick.
Nice. Yeah, you know, like, I'm a Lacoste fan, and so you're saying, like, if I went and bought a new Lacoste shirt that I purchased, if there was a connection to the NFT, that might mean that I would, you know, I'm just using this as an example. That means that maybe that shirt's version would also be available on the metaverse. Correct? I mean, that's kind of
exactly
right. If you partnered. Another one I like, you know, hanging out with the boys. I'd be throwing down some Stone Island. So it's good to see some of these brands making their way from the real world also on the metaverse. And if you buy, you know, a shirt or a label or some kind of product, having it, you know, being able to wear your drip also in the metaverse is pretty cool too. Give us some other examples. This is the kind of utility and some of the things that I think people aren't familiar with. I mean, talk about that community. I like this, you know, mentioning, you know, this tie to brands and apparel. Give me one other good example, maybe something that isn't even implemented yet that you see in the future, a vision.
Yeah. So another big thing that we have been talking a lot about is kind of exactly what you just outlined: partnerships with big brands where people are very familiar with the products that they're offering, and this brand is interested in entering Web3 but doesn't really quite have an understanding of how to do so. And so there's a few different ways that we explore those partnerships in a way that creates value for our community. So it could be very simple, like discount codes, but it could go so far as to jointly creating NFTs that are branded with that particular brand, or exclusive access to events in real life that might be only if you are a holder of this specific NFT will you have access to attend that event. And that's really exciting because we have a lot of brands that we're in conversations with that are excited about entering this space because they understand it's the future, right? It's been talked a lot about by leaders of major tech companies that they view the workforce in the future as potentially being fully remote, which would mean everyone's doing meetings in something like the metaverse as they're going to conferences, going to business meetings. And so a lot of brands are thinking now about, okay, there's a whole new world that we can establish our brand identity within, and how do we do that? And so at Crypto Chicks, we want, number one, to be able to partner with these brands that are aligned with ours in terms of, are they about supporting and empowering women? But number two, position those partnerships in a way that really creates unique value back for our community. That's one of the things that we're always thinking about is utility. And so I mentioned events, for example. We, upcoming in a few months, will be attending NFT NYC. I'll be speaking at one of the events there, but we're also holding an event for our holders. And so we're talking right now with a few different brands that might be sponsors for that event and have some exclusive benefits for people who are holders of the NFT. So it starts to get into the NFTs are your membership pass to an exclusive community that has all of these different types of benefits. And the reason that's important is that different people define utility depending on what matters to them. So some people really just care about an increase in the financial value of their investment, but other people have spent the past 2 years sitting at home alone because of the pandemic, and they really love the interpersonal connections and the relationships that they've been able to build with people from all around the world. Other people are really excited and passionate about the fashion space and getting into the domain of partnerships with major brands. Other people are passionate about how can we empower and uplift women within this space who want to be entrepreneurs. They want to launch projects. They want to create something entirely new within this industry. How can we empower, uplift, and provide them with the resources that they need in order to be successful? So we try to build in a lot of different ways that people can get value from holding a Crypto Chick NFT, just because we understand that we have a diverse community, and the way that people define value and compare value of one NFT collection to another might be different. And so we try to build a good amount of diversity for how we're giving back to our community into that strategy.
Will you expand the collection? Will there be another round? The Crypto Chicks NFT, you mentioned there's 10,000. Is there a Crypto Chicks NFT 2.0? I mean, how does that work? Or is it often when that initial collection's done, that's done, you have a community around it? Is there expansion here, I guess?
Yes. So good question. We are actually planning to launch a new collection on top of our existing 10,000 piece collection. And different collections will approach this differently depending on what their goal is and what their strategy is. For us, we're using this as an opportunity to expand our ecosystem. So right now there's 10,000 Crypto Chicks, which means that there can inherently only ever be 10,000 people that are a part of the Crypto Chicks community, which we feel is too small. We want to have much more impact than that.
And that's if they each own just one. I'm sure that there are a lot of people, a lot of Crypto Chicks holders have more than just one NFT, just knowing how these communities are as well.
Exactly. We have a bunch of people who have bought multiple and are holding multiple. So for example, there's quite a few men within the community that have bought a Crypto Chick that looks like their wife, but then 3 more that looks like each one of their daughters. And so
cool.
there are less than 10,000 holders. We have around 4,500 holders.
And you want
to average people hold too.
And you want to expand that community, so it just makes sense that you would have to, because you want to expand this community. So say the average is there's 10,000 in the collection. Say there's an average of say that it's 2. So now you only have 5,000 in the community. You probably maybe want 100,000. So do you get that by adding? Is that how you get a bigger base, is by adding collections and that kind of thing?
So it's a fine line to walk, because there also is the concept of dilution, where you're creating
Right.
too much and then people aren't as excited to buy any one of them.
Right.
And so there's a fine line to walk there. I think usually collections can get by with launching 10,000 more, or maybe if it's a huge collection, maybe you can get by with launching 20,000 more. But getting to the magnitude of 100,000, if you want to really create a lot of utility for each of those holders, can be challenging. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it can be challenging to pull off. So we're not thinking anywhere close to 100,000.
Because when you think about that, when it stops becoming special, that's not good at all either. I know we've covered a lot of ground today, and it's really been great talking to you. As we wrap up today's Gains podcast, I'm going to bring you on again, definitely when you're going to launch another line or you have some big development. Definitely want to bring you on. This has been a fascinating conversation, and we definitely want to expand the people who are into NFTs. So as we wrap up the Gains discussion today about all of this, what's your takeaway? What's your parting shots here?
Parting shots are that there are tons of collections out there, and it's important to find a community and a network of people that you feel really resonates with you. The highest success that at least I have seen, and many of the people that I know have seen in the NFT market, is by buying and investing in projects that you have really high conviction in based on the leadership team or the vision and the mission that they are building. So anyone who is not currently in NFTs that's thinking about it and wants to join, that's my biggest recommendation, is try not to go chasing hype, but really have a deep think about what is the project that you are investing? What are they trying to achieve in the world? Why is that measurably different from other collections? And then is this something that you really see being successful 1-2 years from now? And then if you're investing with those principles, and I think that's why we've had great success with the Crypto Chicks community, because we have been able to find people that are really aligned with what we're building. That's the best way to find success and also operate in the NFT space in a way that's a little bit safer and less subject to a lot of the volatility and risk that I think is kind of scaring people away a little bit right now.
You said Twitter is a valuable resource for all of this. Give me your top 5 Twitter accounts that to follow, that as soon as I'm done listening to the Gains podcast today, I'm going to go over to Twitter and I'm going to start following these 5. Give me 5.
5 is hard. I think I follow like 1,500 people.
Right.
And the reason this is a non-answer to your question, but I'm going to do this, is I think there's a lot of different people and a lot of diverse minds in this industry, and it's important to follow a ton of different people that will give you different perspectives on things. So, for example, there's a lot of influencers who have a huge following, people like Gary Vee, for example, incredible man, a huge visionary in the market. But if you follow just Gary Vee, you'll only learn about the projects that Gary Vee is interested in. And there's a lot of other different people that have other projects that they're interested in as well. And so I find that I get the most insights from people who have like 100 followers on Twitter that are talking about something they're so deeply passionate about. And so that's why it's a non-answer to your question, but I would just recommend that people go searching for those hidden gems of really small following people that are just dropping knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb.
Well, you got to at least give us your Twitter handle.
Yes, yeah. My Twitter is at NFTs_girl.
All right, so we'll definitely add that. And the final thing as we wrap up today, is there a book, a website, a go-to source where somebody can just kind of get their beak wet, learn a little bit more about this? Where, for the newbies out there, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a website, where do you start? Give us one place where we can go right after this podcast and start our journey.
Yeah, my recommendation would be on YouTube, actually. I have found that the visual and auditory combination of YouTube is really helpful for people that the way that they can absorb information. I think Gary Vee, sorry, this is the second time I've mentioned Gary Vee, but
yeah, who is that? Who is Gary Vee? You know, I think a lot of us are familiar with him, but explain Gary Vee real quick.
Gary Vee is kind of a pioneer in the NFT space. He's someone who has been, he's the CEO of VaynerMedia, which is a big media and communications company, but he's also very, very actively involved in the NFT space and has been talking a lot about this for years. And so more frequently than anyone else, if I am talking to someone and I'm asking, how did you get into the NFT space? The vast majority of people will say, I actually was watching this YouTube video from Gary Vee, or I saw Gary Vee on TikTok, and he was saying, this is the future. If you do anything today, do this. Look up NFTs, understand what the technology is, because this is going to change the world. And so I think for a lot of people in the industry, he's had major influence on them, myself included. And so I recommend for bite-sized content, but also really clear and easy to understand explanations of how the NFT industry works. He's a great person to check out.
All right, Alyssa. Well, hey, thanks again. It was a great conversation. Like I said, we'll have you back on. And, we learned a ton today, and it's a really interesting space. And I think even a lot of things about this haven't even been created yet. Some of the utility hasn't even been thought of yet for NFTs. And again, a big thanks to Alyssa Merklein, CEO of Crypto Chicks NFT out of San Francisco. And as always, be sure to subscribe, follow, and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And as always, subscribe and turn on those notifications so you know when a new Gains episode drops. We drop Gains episodes on Wednesday and Friday mornings. So thanks for listening, and we will see you on Friday.
A News Radio WBBM podcast powered by Odyssey.